What is a dead giveaway that someone grew up in an abusive household? Story 1. A roommate and I were having a disagreement in the kitchen, and I absent-mindedly reached into a cabinet above for a plate to make a sandwich. The roommate flinched as I reached up. So, that. I used to get in trouble for flinching, and also for putting my hands up to block a blow, but the flinching made her look bad in public. Maybe if you didn't hit me so often, I wouldn't flinch. She didn't care for that logic. Yeah, my stepdad's solution to that problem was to repeatedly hit me until I stopped flinching. People would remark in my late teens and early 20s how unshakable I was, that nothing could get a reaction out of me. I would joke that the ability to feel fear was beaten out of me as a child. They never caught on that it wasn't a joke. I can't count the number of times I've shared a funny little story about my childhood only to realize from the horrified faces of onlookers that that wasn't a universal experience. And frankly, my parents were pretty okay as far as abusive parents go. They were like semi-abusive. I had a coworker who had an outburst and threw a heavy pan into a sink. I wasn't even close to it really, just in the same general area, and kinda screamed angrily. I had a full-blown panic attack and locked myself in a bathroom. Don't even remember how I got to the bathroom. I just remember him having tears in his eyes that triggered that. I was 28 and didn't even know I could/would react to something that way. Luckily, my mom kept us pretty damn safe after leaving my bio dad, and I hadn't really spent time with people who had outbursts like that since childhood. Wild how it's just still in there even when we don't know it. My coworker yelled at me in the kitchen once, and my scared voice came out. My voice jumps up a full octave or more, and I sound like a young child when it happens. Everyone around got kinda quiet and stunned, and my loud, angry coworker pulled a 180 and apologized. My scared voice is incredibly embarrassing, like people can see straight through to the frightened, wounded child that I feel like I nearly am all the time. I was used to domestic violence until I moved out, so I was pretty impressed with my ability to not have responses and appear normal. Until I was at a fundraiser for work, decades since we lived in an abusive home, and they played audio clips from domestic violence calls, and I felt every nerve cell in my body go hyper-reactive. I kept it together, but then I realized everyone else at the table was having a reaction of horror, shock, and even tears, as they should. But I had to remain non-responsive because I couldn't trust my response to not give away how it impacted me. My response made me realize I wasn't as far removed and could be thrown back at a few simple sounds, but I also couldn't respond normally either. Then I realized that people who grow up in non-violent households get upset when exposed to violence and anger, and my unflappable approach probably gave away how normal it was for me to be non-responsive and tramp down my reactions, because I wasn't shocked or horrified. I was familiar. It's such a damn mixed bag. Story 2. Apologize for everything that isn't your fault. Take blame for events around you that don't involve you. Do everything you can to minimize the emotional outbursts of others. It's not great. Add being defensive and resentful and passive-aggressive, all of the above, with this, a terrible self-image and lack of confidence to boot. Deep down, I know that everything that goes wrong is not my fault, but on the observable superficial level, because I'm terrified of anyone else's anger, I over-apologize, take the blame, and try to fix it. However, because the problem really isn't my fault and I'm very conflicted, and I will also try to defend myself and resent you because I think you're blaming me, whether you are or not, it's made my life a terrible mess, and it is a deeply ingrained response that's very hard to correct. My mother had a personality disorder, never diagnosed because she refused to seek treatment, and would threaten my father with divorce and getting full custody when he tried to get her into some sort of counseling. Being raised by a malignant narcissist will mess you up. Man, I feel your comments so much. I noticed I get very anxious if I'm not the one driving because I want to drive just so that if something goes wrong, like an accident or whatever, it'll genuinely be me at fault, or at the receiving end of everything because I feel like no matter what, every and anything that can and will happen will be my fault somehow. Just sort of delving into this in therapy. Apparently, my small, manageable OCD tendencies have some correlation to these feelings too. If something goes wrong, it'll feel like my fault, so I make stupid rules about random crap to get a sense of control over whatever I can, and paranoid about weird stuff too. Don't know if you need to be told this, but resentment is just you doing it to yourself while doing absolutely nothing to the person who should be getting the crap. If you can realize this and find a way of correctly assigning blame and moving past that, you will find your head is a much more peaceful place to be. Also, the reduced stress will likely increase your lifespan, which improves your odds of being able to piss on their grave. Actually intending to piss on their grave is resentment, but knowing you can, having a little smile, and getting on with the rest of your day isn't if you appreciate the difference. It took way too many decades for me to realize this. Story 3. Easily startled, terrified of making their partners upset, refusing to speak to one or both parents, and overthinking about small mistakes. How do we get over this? I literally cannot handle people getting mad at me. It ruins my entire day even if I know they're in the wrong. There are many answers and no one thing will do all of it, but a good first step is to understand that your nervous system is part of your body, and you have to exercise your neural pathways to make them stronger. Right now, the neural pathways that cause panic, sorrow, and self-doubt when someone is mad at you are the ones you use the most. In order to change this in the long term, it's important to spend time every day practicing how to be calm using things like meditation and polyvagal exercises. Little by little, as you use the parts of your brain associated with calmness more, they will get stronger and be more available to you in moments of stress. Remember, this can happen at a snail's pace, so the key is consistency. Maybe use an app to help remind you. I have been using something called Finch, which is basically a Tamagotchi that thrives when you complete wellness tasks. Seems to help a lot of people. Beyond that, I've come a lot farther with processing my own trauma once I recognized the importance of movement and body work. For the record, I don't mean formal exercise. I'm not one of those if you run you won't need antidepressants kind of people. But when we talk about flight or fight, we often leave out freeze, which is often the safest response when you are a child. Many of us went into freeze mode during the abuse of our childhood. Some experts believe that trembling after extreme stress was a response that evolved to help us rid our body of the chemicals and physical reactions to stress, so they didn't get caught in our bodies. But in our society, shaking and trembling when frightened is discouraged. This is all to say that when I become triggered now, for any reason, or even if I just suspect it's happening, I literally shake it off. I find a private place and bounce my hips, if I'm seated or lying down, or shake out my hands as hard as I can. I will do it for several minutes at a time if necessary. I don't think there's any peer-reviewed anything about this, but anecdotally, I have made significant strides in processing my trauma in the 2 years or so that I've been doing this, at a much greater pace than I had in many years prior. I hope this helps. Please reach out if there's any way I can be of assistance. I feel like this is part of the terrified of making partner upset bit, at least for me, but not being able to set boundaries, or having trouble speaking up for yourself. It's just generally something I struggle with anyone, regardless of my relationship with them, but it's far worse when it's my partner because I get the instant fear of if I say this bothers me, / that I don't like this, then they'll be angry at me or leave me. It's something I'm working on heavily, especially because I have autism, so there are a lot of boundaries that are just absolutely necessary for me, but it's such a difficult / stressful process. My BF and I recently just had an argument about this. The argument started from something small and insignificant, but for some reason I ended up overthinking and blowing it out of proportion. At the end, when he was just trying to explain his thinking, I kind of just shut down and nodded along with what he was saying, and ended up just accepting the whole thing as my fault. We ended up talking about it later when everyone was calm again, and he was saying how uncomfortable he got when I just started agreeing with everything he was saying. He said that it was weird that I didn't talk back and he expected me to snap back at him, but I just quietly took everything. I had to tell him that growing up, whenever I tried to explain my side in a situation, my parents always thought of it as talking back and being rebellious. So I just internalized that no one would ever believe me, and it's easier to just go along with what the other side is saying. God, I feel this so much. I get it. It's really only been recently, I'm 25 now, that I've been trying to assert myself more, and not just take everything lying down. Cause, like you said, when I was younger, if I even so much as dared to say a word, it was me misbehaving or talking back. No matter how natural or neutral my expression / tone of voice was, I was having an attitude. Even just nodding along / agreeing with my mom pissed her off. I could literally say, yes, you're right, and she'd get angry at me, LMAO, because, I don't know, in hindsight, she probably wanted me to fight with her on purpose, since I was essentially her punching bag, but I obviously didn't want to participate. Now, because of that, I just won't say anything or react at all to people if they yell at me or are angry at me about anything, because I learned that no matter what, I could never win. Story 4. As a result of my childhood, I over-explain everything. I assume I won't be believed. I randomly start crying when I have the slightest feeling that the other person won't believe me, even if it's very obvious I'm not lying. Like saying the sun shines while it's almost blinding me and I still think they think I'm lying. Oh my god, that makes sense. I worry all the time that people will think I'm lying about something when I'm not, but I never put two and two together. Like if I say the wrong thing, like, oh, I went to Kroger today, but I actually went to H-E-B, I'm super quick to correct myself because I don't want people to think I'm lying. I never even considered why I got anxious over that kind of thing. Probably wasn't the best example, but it's with little details usually that don't even really matter. I worry someone will treat me like they caught me in a lie if they find out I accidentally misspoke. What is the impetus for this, though? I strongly value honesty and can't stand the idea of anyone not being able to trust me. I can't lie about anything. I'm afraid that if I was discovered, I'd be worthless, because that's how I view dishonesty. But where did that come from? I don't know if other people are like this, but it's also caused me to be a bit lawyer-like with my answers at times. I don't want to tell someone the truth because it's a secret or whatever. I am able to very quickly say something that is 100% true and will satisfy them, but will not reveal what I don't want to reveal. Man, this one is not talked about enough. I don't even mean to, but I give my friends and SO complete breakdowns of what I've been doing when asked. How has my day been? Or something along those lines, and I'm kind of flabbergasted that people just naturally don't do this. On the same spectrum, I plan my entire day this way in roughly 15 to 30 increments. There are no schedule gaps to be questioned about. Story 5. They don't ask for help with anything ever. I have this issue as well. There was one incident with a friend that really helped me that I tried to remember when needed. We were at a friend's celebration of life and had to quickly clean up the room we'd rented as they were closing. I had a broken foot and was getting around with a boot cast and a walker. I jumped in to help stack chairs and clear tables with everyone else. Finally, one of my close friends said, "Hey, we know you can do these things, and it's very impressive, but we can see that you're in pain and you're making us all feel like a-holes. Would you please take a seat and let us take care of this?" It really drove me to the point that despite being denied basic needs as a kid to the point where I stopped asking, I now have friends who want to help and want me to ask for it. That was 5 years ago, and I'm still working on it, but I try to remember those words when I do really need help with something. I still get no's sometimes, but the yeses are the ones I wouldn't get if I hadn't asked. Yeah, eventually you realize nobody is ever going to help you, and then you wonder why other people get help and you can't ever seem to. Finally, you realize it's you that's the problem and stay away from everyone. Realizing I had to change something was step 1. Actually changing something by reaching out to people for help is much harder, but a necessary step 2. Most people around me thought I was fine. They had no idea I was internally struggling, and they continued to have no way to know until I started talking about what I was going through. People want to help, but I also had to be willing to ask hard and accept their help, even harder. Don't go it alone. That is the trap that kept me stuck for so long. When my dad died in an accident, his family disowned me and told everyone at the funeral that my mom and I killed him. When my mom died of cancer, her family said they would help me with going through her effects and would be there for me. Many times. Nobody ever helped. When I was sick and was unable to function, neighbors just gave me crap for not keeping up my lawn. When I ask for help from friends, they never have time, so I don't ask anymore. When I ask for help from medical professionals, the most important qualifying information is my bank account balance and the contents of my wallet. The theme of this is, I don't ask for help because nobody will help me. My stepmom told me when I was in the 2nd grade that she needed a new transmission on our family car because she had driven it so much to pick me up from school. She said it was my fault we wouldn't have a working car soon, and because of me, my dad might lose his job. And how are we going to get groceries? And stepsister will need to drop out of gymnastics, etc. She went on. Between her and my dad, she was the one I felt safe with. But I always knew I was a burden to her because she made sure I knew in more ways than just that. I loved her and considered her a second mom, and she resented my existence. Now, as an adult, she wonders why I am distant from her while I tried over the years to have a relationship with my sister, half. It's hard to not tell my sister how awful her mom was to me because they are very close. So yeah, I don't ask for help from anyone. Story 6. This is anecdotal, true for me, but I have no idea if it applies to others. I love being alone. I'm not an introvert. When I'm around other people, I'm very outgoing, but given the choice, I greatly prefer being alone. I'm safe when I'm alone. Same here. Not openly abusive, but silent and manipulative, enough to make me shut down my personality whenever my father is around. He effectively snuffed out each and every interest, desire, dream, and quirk I ever had, and killed my drive to meet people and to become a better person for the longest time of my life. It only got better when I finally started bringing home some bread. It's so tragic that trauma can make us abandon one of our most primal and basic instincts. I love being alone too, but I sometimes long for the company of others. Then, when I weigh the thoughts of spending time with someone else versus time by myself, I always come out the winner. It's something I want to break eventually. I hope to one day find someone I'm happy to be alone with. I'm safe when I'm alone resonates a lot with me. Currently in therapy due to childhood abuse, and most of my life have been a runner. I will avoid talking about my childhood by using humor. If someone has a bad day even, and they are short with me, I automatically go into anxiety mode and imagine all the ways they are about to break up with me. I fantasize about leaving my fiancé because then he won't have to deal with this and I won't get hurt. I hate this. I'm safe when I'm alone. It's peaceful, but I'm not as happy as I could be, like the few fleeting times I've had a mate. But even when I've had one, I cannot stop stressing out over whether I've said something stupid or whether I haven't done something that I should have that will make them want to leave. Friends are just as difficult. I'm lucky as hell to have any friends who I barely see, but when I'm with them, I'm hyper aware that we'd have different upbringings, that they're well adjusted and I am not. Alone is peaceful and safe, yeah. I know I'm not going to have to be a peacekeeper or tread on eggshells or wonder if the quiet is just a fight that's about to erupt, or if it's the quiet of disregard. Peaceful, yeah. Not happy, but maybe that's enough. Story 7. They freeze when people start yelling. Weirded out by a family being nice to one another. Upset when you see a happy family dinner in shows or movies. I want to vent. I used to freeze when people were yelling or fighting up until around the 4th grade. I had reached out to teachers and the school officer and brought up what was going on at home. They concluded that there's no way a family acts like that and that I must be making up stories, so I dropped it and lived with it. When I'd see friends' parents and they were acting all loving and nice, to me it felt super fake and scripted. It was very uncomfortable, like being on the set of a movie when I'm a terrible actor. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? At what point do I need to go to another room so your parents can duke it out? And when they didn't, I'm like, don't change your routine on my behalf. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at my house, so it wasn't like someone could say, your parents are messed up. And when I got older, I was not going to invite friends over, mostly because I knew I'd probably have to wake them up in the middle of the night with my routine. My father had tried to kill us a few times, leaving a car running in the garage when he went to work at 2 a.m., or leaving the heat off and opening all the windows and doors in the house in the dead of winter with below 0 temps. I legit did not realize how messed up that was until I was like 16 and my girlfriend witnessed it. I would just wake up in the middle of the night and make sure the doors were closed, the heat was on, the car wasn't running. Now I'm trying to keep a line of communication open with my parents for the sake of the rest of my family. Most people still wouldn't believe me, but occasionally my mom would say something to unlock and confirm an old memory. Like, remember when your dad killed your dog in front of you? She thinks doing that is funny. I'm like, can you put that in writing? That is beyond terrible. I'm sorry you have to grow up like that. You deserved so much better. I'm also so disappointed that your teachers and school officer failed you. People from good or not completely psycho families sometimes don't believe your parents could have been that bad because it wasn't possible in their head. It's crappy when people invalidate you like that, but it's 10 times worse when it's a teacher. Even if they think a kid is exaggerating or telling stories, they can't just ignore it. That's why mandatory reporters exist, so they have to report it whether they believe it or not. I hope you did therapy or whatever you need to do to understand it was not your fault and you didn't imagine it. You deserved better. I kicked my parents out after Christmas dinner. Neighbors heard it all and called the police. In the end, I had them trespassed from our home. They had finally slipped and had an outburst, and my family saw the devils inside them. My wife never believed all the crazy stuff I told her because they seemed so normal and upstanding. It scared my daughter, and I am letting her decide whether to see them again. So far, not yet. Story 8. The therapist checking in here. A more subtle one is that they are hyper aware of their surroundings and people's emotions, as that was a tool of safety that tends to not be able to shut off as they become an adult. I have this. I think it's like a superpower because I had to walk on eggshells as a kid to ensure the emotional needs of my mom were met all the time. I am extremely good at assessing my surroundings. I'm a dentist, and the patients love me because I can literally see one small facial muscle move and know they're in pain or discomfort, and address it before they've even said anything. I think being a child of a narcissist or some other abuser creates empathy. We developed those skills to literally survive, but in adulthood can use them elsewhere. I find this happens to me in super random ways that people I'm with never seem to notice. I had an acquaintance who was in many fights get punched by someone who was pretending to be friendly with him, and my acquaintance never saw it coming. I was waving all of my friends over before the aggressor even started throwing punches. To this day, I have no idea how I knew the stranger was going to start throwing down, but I was 100% certain of it. I wasn't even within hearing range and had no idea what they were talking about. It was all from the motion and expression somehow. I'm also super aware of people who are unstable and about to flip out in public, even though they seem super calm. I can't even describe why or how, but it's helped me avoid frequent altercations just by going to the other side of the street as someone flips out of nowhere. As someone who has a hard time with the dentist and also has a sensitive mouth and is reactive to pain and machine noise, uncontrollable shakes that are subconscious level, we truly appreciate a dentist who is empathetic. I'm sorry for how you had to be as a kid in order to survive, but I'm glad you've turned it into something positive and helpful for those you work with. It makes all the difference to have a dentist who is like you. And it's infuriating when normal people aren't also hyper aware of their surroundings and emotions. It's so normal to me, and even something as simple as someone walking in front of me and stopping. Like, how are you not aware of every single thing and person around you? I can't turn it off, and I can't fathom any other existence. It also makes me feel like they're stupid for not having any hyper-awareness. Like, how are people living like that? Story 9. They are really good at finding out what people in authority want to hear, and some are really good at manipulation as a result. Not due to evil means necessarily, but to survive and get by. Manipulation in a certain sense maybe. When a parent can blow up in a fit of rage in an instant, you become extremely attuned to the slightest indicator that a rage is about to happen. So you become very keyed in to not only verbal but non-verbal language that most people aren't aware of and aren't aware they're telegraphing. It's purely defensive, but it can seem like you're actively trying to keep people in their calm zone using their own signals. That's called emotional regulation. They can't regulate their emotions, so you have to do it for them. I grew up regulating my narcissistic father's explosive emotions to survive, so of course I did the same in my romantic relationships. I would sense when my partner was the slightest bit upset and nudge them to a happy place. I thought I was the best boyfriend, ignoring my own emotions to take care of my girlfriend. It used to drive my current girlfriend nuts until she finally told me, let me live my own emotions. It took many years of couples therapy for my husband to understand that this was what he was doing and why I hated it. Why it made me feel like I was just a carbon cutout of a pretend human that he didn't actually consider a person, but rather just an obstacle to get past any sort of uncomfortable conversation or situation that would pop up. That I am a real person, that my feelings matter, and that if I have an issue that I need to discuss with him, he absolutely must address it with me. Maybe not right away, but he doesn't get to just lie to me in order to avoid the uncomfortable conversation. And I had to learn that it wasn't because of me that he was acting like this, doing these things, engaging in these behaviors. It was because of his entire childhood of basically having to avoid landmine after landmine every single day with his alcoholic mother and enabling father. I had to understand that, while the things I was asking for were completely reasonable and really pretty much required for a functioning and healthy relationship, the reason he struggled to do those things was not because of some failure on him or because I was doing something wrong. It was because of childhood these issues that would pop up were not legitimate and were based on basically addiction and abuse. Story 10. They can identify people based on their footsteps and cry in absolute silence. Half of my teenage years were spent just laying in my bed doing nothing, hearing my mom pace around downstairs on the hardwood floors, heel walker, and anxiously hoping those footsteps didn't start walking towards my room. Damn, I feel this. I lived in the basement and would hear screaming matches every other day. The worst times were when the downstairs door would open and they would start stomping down the stairs towards me. That feeling of dread never left me. I hated every second of it. When car tires roll over gravel, I panic. That's the sound of my dad coming home. Mind you, I'm 50 and he's been dead for 5 years, and I haven't lived with him since I was 12, but that sound still makes my heart rate triple. For me, it's the sound of a garage from inside the house, the distinct thought of my dad's lunchbox on the counter and my mom coming home in heels from work. They never hit me, but the way their failing marriage made everything tense the moment they got home made me feel dread. My parents never seemed to get that one being overbearing and the other being neglectful can screw a kid up even if you don't physically hurt them. Every conversation turning into being judged made me feel like I had to hide constantly. I loved it when I was home alone because I could feel actual peace for a while. I still feel that way. Being alone is safe. This comment is particularly heartbreaking. I didn't, but my wife grew up in an abusive household. Watching her work her ass off to break those generational curses so our daughters don't have to go through what she did and have a better life than she does is inspiring. It's also been a window into my wife as to why she is the way she is. Story 11. Can't relax. What if something needs to be done? As my therapist said in response to describing myself as an active relaxer because it makes me uncomfortable to lounge on a beach while on vacation or watch TV. Doc: well, yeah, it's pretty normal for someone with your abusive background to have anxiety. Me: anxiety? What? Doc: yeah, humans are excellent relaxers. Preserving energy is an evolutionary survival trait. You just described not being comfortable on a beach while on vacation. That's not normal. That's anxiety. Oh, been 5 years since understanding my anxiety and I can now relax with my family. Gotta know the problem before you can find a solution. As my partner told me the other day, not everything needs to be rectified instantly. Apparently it's not normal that if he says he's cold, I'll stop doing what I'm doing and put the heating on. He says he's hungry, I instantly ask what he wants to eat, even though he will normally sort his own food out. I still can't help but be at constant attention to instantly fix whatever might cause him to be upset with me. He's never even given me a reason to be like this with him. It's just who I am, though I'm working on it now. This is why I stay up late and don't sleep. I recently had to move back in with my parents due to financial reasons, and it has brought me back to feeling like a teenager again. It's miserable. Last night after everyone went to bed, I sat down next to the wood stove just to relax for a moment and I passed out and woke up 3 hours later. I didn't realize how exhausted I've been or how much pent-up anxiety I've had since moving back, but for some reason last night it kinda all hit me at once. Story 12. They tend to be very independent and have backup plans for their backup plans. It comes from a living environment that was unstable where they were often left to rely upon themselves to get by. And as others have pointed out, this independence can also manifest as a desire to be in control because you do not want to be subjected to the ambiguity and unreliability of others. I actually read it in a book. I think it was called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, where it said that a lot of kids who grow up in abusive households end up accidentally manifesting their anxiety into becoming high-functioning adults. So on the surface, they may seem like they have it together, but on the inside, they're terrified they're one step away from their life falling apart. Yep, 100%. I grew up in that sort of household and have that sort of anxiety. My life is arguably amazing. My financial situation is on point. My life is going well, and my job is good. But I am always worried that one small mistake could set me into poverty and a hellish situation. An ever-present feeling of dread that something is about to go wrong never seems to go away. I feel the same way. Whenever things are going well, I'm always thinking something's gonna go horribly wrong. The show The Bear actually helped me with dealing with that feeling. The Christmas episode was similar to what our Thanksgiving would feel like, but obviously not the same over-the-top ending. There's an episode where Claire mentions to Carmen, "There isn't another shoe," and it really resonated because every time something good was happening, I could tell myself to not get too relaxed, or else I wouldn't be prepared for when it falls apart. I didn't even know that feeling was not a normal state before the show mentioned it. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story that you feel comfortable sharing with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.